With a special live edition of News Nation in the heart of Wall Street, where protesters have been railing against what they say is corporate greed in this country for nearly 3 weeks. Thank you so much for joining us. Since these protests have started, quite honestly, we've seen it spread from the camp that you see behind me to across this country. I'm getting tweets from people in Texas, in Boston, even in Arizona, where they say they stand in their home state in solidarity with the people here. We're also even hearing of people watching in Greece, for example, this movement taking inspiration as they fight austerity measures in that country. Protests are being held and planned right now in more than 50 cities, and there are so-called unofficial meetups in at least 217 different cities in this country right now. At this hour, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, students are being urged to leave their classroom and join this movement that, again, has grown in 19 days. And in just about an hour, thousands of people from about a dozen unions representing transit workers, nurses, teachers as well will join this protest. They have a staging area to the north of where I am standing, and they plan to march on the streets of New York to this location. Protesters say that they are gathering here, they are gathering around the country because they say they are fed up.
There's the rich, then there's the poor, and then there was us. And the rich are stepping on our necks. They're trying to squash us down. But this is called an uprising, and we are taking back what is ours.
It's for all of you who are tired of watching the banks get bailed out while we get sold out.
Wealth disparity, corporate personhood, these things are unacceptable while millions are on the streets starving.
And joining me now, NBC's Mara Schiavocampo. She's covering this with me. Mara, we've covered a lot of interesting stories. I find this one intriguing for so many reasons. Every person you talk to has a different reason that they're here. Some of them are out of work. Some of them say that they've watched this country in their minds go in the wrong direction. They're affected by the Tea Party or whatever. The one central thing they say, though, is corporate greed. How are they what does that even mean to them?
Right. So they're united basically against corporate interests, and they say that they consist of the 99% of Americans that have not prospered economically. Now, it means a lot of different things. As you pointed out, they have no mission statement. They have no goals. They actually tout that as a virtue because they say it's a very big tent. There are a lot of people who are welcome in it. What they have done very recently, which is significant, is in this newspaper that they have been publishing periodically. This is a newsletter that they have been printing, publishing, and writing. They have identified a list of grievances. So this is their declaration of the occupation. This is something they voted on, they agreed upon, and these are their grievances against corporate interests. Things like foreclosures, things like using taxpayer money to fund bailouts. And at the end is a call to action. They're encouraging people all over the country to take to the streets to exercise their right of peaceable assembly. So for now, that is what this group has in common, is that they're unified against corporate interests, and they want something to change, still to be determined what exactly that means.
Now, the union is going to join these people, union members, I should say, at least 4 different union members, unions will join them here at this location. They're marching, as I said, from the north of us.
That's right. There is a rally that is taking place of union members a couple of blocks away. They will be marching here at 4:30, merging forces for a much larger rally, and they're expecting this to be their biggest event yet because now their numbers have been swelled, presumably by all of the union members that are coming out to support their cause.
And the money is coming in, which is also an interesting part of the story, and that they've received tens of thousands of dollars in donations, most of which collected online.
Absolutely. And what's interesting about it is they have no leadership. So in terms of managing that money, they have volunteers who have stepped up and who are doing their best to try to manage it and allocate it appropriately. They have medical facilities here. They have free food here. So they're trying to do what they can with it. But this is growing much faster than they can keep up with, and they're the first to admit that.
And this is not just New York. We're seeing this
all over the country. And in fact, now there are support groups that are being organized all over the world, as far away as Japan, Canada, Australia. So there are a lot of people all over the world who are paying attention to this and who want to express their solidarity with this group.
And we have our own Stephanie Stanton, who's watching the protests or rallies that are taking place in California as well.
Great.
Let's take a look.
Thank you, Jeannie.
I'm Stephanie Stanton at the Occupy Los Angeles protest, where dozens of tents are set up here on the lawn at City Hall. Hundreds of protesters, in fact, have been here since over the weekend, and they say they plan to stay as long as Christmas. Now, many of the protesters are holed up inside their tents because it is a very rainy day here in Los Angeles. Several of them are holding court here outside. Those are the die-hard protesters. The protesters would ordinarily be and holding signs, but the weather's put a damper on that. Now, unlike some of the other protests in other cities, these protesters say their aim is peaceful. In fact, they are working hand in hand with city officials, and one LA City Council member, Bill Rosendahl, put forth a resolution in support of these protesters. So several of the protesters will be attending an LA City Council meeting today to talk about that. And also, LA's Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa is also set to visit this encampment. So that is what is happening here in downtown Los Angeles. I'm Stephanie Stanton. Tamron, back to you in New York.
All right, Stephanie, thank you. And with me now, of course, is Dylan Radigan, host of the Dylan Radigan Show on MSNBC. Dylan, you've been down here how many days now?
Since last Friday, so I don't know how many days is that. It's 5 days?
At least 5 days. Tell me what you see different now than you saw 5 days ago.
Quite honestly, every time I come down here, I see the exact same thing.
Which is what?
Which is a group of people that have almost nothing in common with each other other than the shared agreement that their country is not in their control and that the powers of wealth, the narrow powers of wealth, are buying their government at auction and they're not going to take it anymore.
You made a statement that
simple?
has hit the blogs like wildfire where you said this is the Tea Party movement before the Tea Party was bought out.
Yeah, I look at this like a blackjack game where they're dealing huge waves of energy. And the Tea Party was the first wave, coming to reject the obvious corruption between business and state that we saw coming out of the bailouts. The Tea Party went into a ditch. There was this huge wave under Barack Obama, inspiring wave of people, myself included, thought Barack Obama and the Democrats will address this problem. Didn't happen. This, to me, is the third wave of that energy. We don't know what this is going to do, but we do know that the energy that is underlying the frustration at our government's refusal to end the relationship between those that fund our politicians and the policies they make has to be addressed.
But let's talk about this. You've got the president pitching the jobs plan, saying that, there has to be fairness, there has to be equity in what people pay out. Who are they then mad with? Who are they blaming for where we are now?
They are blaming a combination of large, wealthy private interests and our government, and the fact that we have gotten ourselves into what is really an auction-based democracy. The only statistic that matters is that 94% of the time, the candidate that raises the most money wins. The rhetoric doesn't matter. Red state doesn't matter. Blue state doesn't matter. Black, white, old, young, red tie, blue tie, I don't care. It purely has become an auction for power, and that auction for power is the fundamental betrayal of the country that everybody is seeing.
So are you saying to me these people are not aligned with a political party?
They are not aligned with a political. This is not a political movement as I see it. This is a principled movement based on the very simple principle of the demand by the American people to restore a sense of fairness to the taxpayers' relationship with their government when their government appears to be working on behalf of exclusively those who fund them.
Mitt Romney yesterday said this is class warfare.
That is an effort to create division. This is a group of people that are seeking to create an expansion of harmony and alignment. These people claim to be the 99%. And so to the extent to which others in the political sphere want to portray this as a divisive event because it may be advantageous to their power or their agenda, that is everybody's will to do. But if you listen to the people that are in this park, they are not after rich people. They come right up to me and they say, listen, Dylan, we love wealth. We love wealth when it's created by working together to solve problems with aligned interests. But when you take money by buying out the government and manipulating the tax code and manipulating trade policy and manipulating banking policy, it outrages them, and quite honestly, it outrages me.
But Dylan, this movement was started by a company based in Vancouver. I mean, it's grassroots, but it didn't start with someone in Chicago or somebody in New York, for that matter, sending out the rally cry. It came from outside.
I think this is one of those things that how it started is less relevant ultimately than where it is now and where it's headed. Yes, somebody from Vancouver may have thrown the initial pill in the water that brought this out, but what matters is the energy is there to converge around the value system of ending bought government and ending an auction democracy.
Okay, we're seeing these rallies sprout up, 50 different cities so far. There are several others planned in the next few days.
Occupy colleges, the kids are walking out today in school.
But again, I have to wrap my mind around this. I can look at any other major movement, the civil rights movement. We can look at the Arab Spring. They had stated goal.
Yeah.
And I'm not
They
sure.
have a stated goal.
What is the goal?
Their stated goal is to end the ability for business to purchase our state.
How do you do that?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it. As you know, we, unrelated to this, have started a foundation and a coalition called Get Money Out to force a constitutional amendment that bans, basically invokes NCAA rules that basically bans all federal politicians from taking money. As opposed to getting an argument of how you fund it, you basically lock it out. A lot of people here are on board with that Get Money Out coalition. A lot of the General Assemblies are adopting that as the action point. I don't know what they will all do, but there is a tool to do it, and it is a wave of energy to force a debate around a constitutional amendment to get the money out, to breach that relationship between business and state.
This started September 17th. Where were these people, say, September 1st? Were many of these people already unemployed? What was the straw that broke the camel's back? What got them here besides this email that went out?
When you talk to folks, people had such high hopes for this president. And a lot of people had really high hopes for the Tea Party, quite honestly, going back a few years.
You think some of these people have
I know that they did.
Okay.
There's Tea Partiers here that have left the Tea Party and joined Occupy Wall Street. The fact of the matter is that the failure to resolve that alliance between business and state by everybody up to this point is what is bringing everybody to this point.
I guess my question, though, is where were they after the bailout? I mean, you know,
I asked the same question. I asked the same question, and I ultimately believe that the bailout, the reason this didn't happen right after the bailout is because that energy after the bailout went two places. Into Barack Obama, he'll do it, and the energy from this went into the Tea Party. And the energy from the bailout was huge, and it drove the Tea Party, and it drove Barack Obama. But neither of them dealt with it. And so what you're looking at here is the echo of the failure of the previous efforts to deal with this energetically that have failed.
Okay, neither of us fortune tellers, of course, at least not in our real lives. Where will these people be in a month? And does having a union presence and the unions coming in help them at all?
The union presence, who knows? I would think that the union presence in the short term obviously helps them today just for the numbers on the street and the march. A month from now, what will happen to this group will be determined by the intentions of the people that are in it. If the people that are in it are focused on their own intent, and their intent is to find a positive harness for this energy for 2012, to force a real debate to solve this problem, they will help us fix this country. If their intention is purely to rage against the machine, if their intention is to try to go for a list of policy demands and engage in debate, it will shatter and fall apart. The only chance that they have is to maintain the integrity of their principle, refuse to be baited into the political elite and the media elites debating of them. Well, what do you want? Well, what do you want? Well, what do you want? It's like asking a 4-year-old who you're stealing all their cookies from, what do you want? Well, you know what they want? They want you to stop stealing all their cookies.
That's a great way of breaking it down, Dylan. I greatly appreciate it. I know these people want to talk to you, and they've got a lot to say. I'm happy you made time to come on by.
I'm excited that you're down here.
I am excited to be here. It's been a learning experience in so many levels. You know, you can be inside of a studio, and you know this once you come down.
So different.
It's so different. Thank you very much. And be sure to watch Dylan at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.